if we continue to run on the same templates and the same programming that we're currently running with viewing women as our competition, with comparing ourselves, with approaching them with this you versus me mentality, then we literally are just perpetuating more of the toxic masculinity constructs and energetics. So, as women rise in power, it's also going to require that we address this deep wound. Welcome back to the Shadow Priestess Embodied. I'm your host, Kaylin Rakowski, and thank you for joining me today for another deep dive and exploration into your inner world, into your body, the shadow realms, where we will begin to explore some of these esoteric principles and really begin to drop them down into modern day application and embodiment. This is a sacred place where you can begin to truly meet yourself, meet your medicine, and to meet your magic. This is a place of remembrance. Take a deep breath and let's begin. Welcome back, gorgeous humans, for another episode of the Shadow Priestess Embodied podcast. You guys, I have something fucking juicy today, and this is a contemplation I've been sitting with for a couple days now, and this message just will not leave me. So I wanted to come on and just kind of give you a behind the scenes of like my brain and when I received these downloads and just kind of the process of the unfolding of my transmissions. So this may be a little raw, it might be a little messy, but the message is potent. And I know that feminine leaders really need to hear this. So this week I was working with one of my private clients and we were discussing the sisterhood wound. And for some of you who don't know the sisterhood wound, I'm going to do a short introductory part after this, and then we'll dive into the main conversation. But she was noticing that she was really being triggered by other women and feeling competitive and feeling catty, and like she was almost like gatekeeping. And we were really talking about why more than ever that we really need to address our sisterhood wounds. And right now, I am seeing just a massive rise in the feminine essence, right? Like the feminine is rising. An energy, an emanation that for so long has been demonized and suppressed, repressed, is now making its way more mainstream. And this is beautiful because we're seeing a rise in feminine leadership, right? This ancient way of being that is really starting to come online. We're seeing so many more women-led businesses. We're seeing a rise in like the healers, the wise women, the oracles, right? Like women really reclaiming their power and place on the throne. But what I'm noticing is as we are seeing this rise in feminine leadership and power, we're also seeing a huge illumination of the sister wound. And the reason why I wanted to have this conversation today is because what I'm seeing is that there is a massive healing required collectively for women. That as women, we have to come together and heal this sisterhood wound, because if not, essentially, we are just going to continue to perpetuate the same toxic masculine constructs that we're living in today. So, in order to come back into the foundation of the feminine, which is connection, collaboration, and communion, this starts by collectively healing the sister wound so that the full potency and capacity of feminine leadership can come online and take center stage. So, let's dive in really quickly to what the sisterhood wound is, just if some of you aren't familiar with that, because it's very important to understand that piece before we go deeper into this conversation. Sister wound isn't as heavily discussed, I guess I'll say, but I think that the sister wound is one that shows itself or manifests in our reality more than any of the other wounds. And you will know if you have the sister wound because it's like you have this pain, this distrust, this almost like disease that you feel when you are relating to other women. It's this increased judgment, right? Hyper jealousy, insecurity, the cattiness, the comparison, right? The fear. And these are all ways that the sister wound really manifests in our reality. It is our way that we relate and have relationship with fellow women. And, again, this is coming back to the rise of the patriarchy. And this is because pre-patriarchy, women lived in tribe, in collaboration, in communion. We were in community together. It wasn't unheard of that you would see other women taking care of each other, teaching each other, raising each other's youth, right? It was a beautiful way that we had this synergy because we all worked together from a place of love, from a place of generosity. And what happened was when the rise of the patriarchy came, when the witch hunts came, right, coming back to that witch wound, they started to essentially turn women against each other. So the sister wound really is the trauma of unhealthy coping mechanisms that we had to take on to survive. And it is just manifesting in a way that we have not fully processed that grief. And we just continue to pass it down through generation and generation and generation. And so you have to understand when the burning times came into our reality, okay? When the witch hunts happened, women had no choice but to begin turning on other women. And it wasn't because we didn't love our sisters. It wasn't because um, we were desiring not to be part of the tribe anymore. It was literally our only way to survive. And what had happened was it was that essentially we had these two choices. We could submit to the new ways in the new world and betray our sisters, or become an outcast, or, essentially be persecuted or die. So it created this huge divide between women. And that was precisely the point of the patriarchy. The more divided that us women became, the less powerful they had together and on an individual level. So there is no coincidence that not only did they want to disconnect us from our sense of community, of collaboration, right, of communion, they wanted to take away our sexuality, our sensuality, our power, right? They didn't want us to be celebrated for our uniqueness, for our gifting, for our magic. This was the conditioning which so many of us still see today, that we all need or desire to be the same. Because since the rise of the patriarchy, women have a deep, deep ingrained belief that sameness equals safeness. And if I am to express myself this way, if I am to, be a woman who embodies her ecstasy, who is connected to her pleasure, right? That I essentially am going to be exiled and I will be killed. So you can see how this wounding literally creates paralysis in us feminine essence beings, especially if you are someone who is a trailblazer, who is a blueprint changer, who is here to question the status quo. If you are an ancient, if you are an elder and you carry the codes to essentially be here to birth and to create this new life, you are going to have to move through so many layers of these wounds, not only for yourself, but for all the women who are to come after you, for all of the women who came before you. You literally volunteered to come here to be the change and to be the bridge and to literally birth this new world, this new way of being. Okay. What you're doing here is not lightly. If you were drawn to this conversation, it is because there is magic deep inside you. It is because you are a witch, you are a wise woman, and this is your higher self guiding you into your remembrance to set yourself free. So before we journey deeper into this conversation, on this transmission, I want you to understand that you are no one special. And what I mean by this is just that every single woman suffers from this wound on a collective level, on an individual level, on an ancestral level. It is deeply woven in the fabric of who we are in our energetic signature. But on an individual level, as we begin to address this, to reclaim our power, to move back into the foundation of the sacred feminine, we not only get to heal just our relationship with women, but that sends healing into the collective and into our bloodlines and so on and so forth. So, what we're talking about here is not something to take lightly. This is a super important conversation. And I really believe if you are a feminine leader and you're tapped in and turned on to this, then like you are really here to birth and create something that has not been seen here before. So, why I think that the sisterhood wound is being so heavily illuminated right now is, like I said, we're seeing such a rise or resurrection of feminine power. Feminine essence beings are taking more leadership roles. They're starting more businesses, right? We're seeing women really rise in authority or an authority figure. And since this wound is so deeply woven in us, it really runs as an unconscious program. And from the conversation that I had with my client, I really didn't realize this bridge connecting until she said, when I'm around other women in my industry, that it really triggers this wounding. And it really got me thinking that if we continue to run on the same templates and the same programming that we're currently running, with viewing women as our competition, with comparing ourselves, with approaching them with this you versus me mentality, then we literally are just perpetuating more of the toxic masculinity constructs and energetics. So, as women rise in power, it's also going to require that we address this deep wound. And when I was really sitting of the underlying roots or frequencies of this wound, what was really coming forward was a need for safety, a need for survival, and a requirement of sameness. Those are the things that got instilled in us when the rise of the patriarchy happened, when the witch hunts happened. We took in this programming that being connected or in collaboration or in connection with other powerful women was fucking dangerous, that it wasn't safe. And we still are running that template today. That's why you can see other women in your industry, in whatever industry you're in. And I'll just say coaching for me, but like in the spiritual space, in the coaching's realms, I could easily get into competition with those women because it's hitting on that thread of, okay, well, first and foremost, it's not safe for both of us to be powerful because if we're powerful in numbers, that means that they're going to come and try to essentially kill us. The second thing it's hitting on is that element of sameness. We have this deep, deep conditioning that safety happens when we are the same. So, in order to feel a level of safety, then her and I have to be exactly the same. So, if you and I have to be exactly the same, then that means I'm going to be looking at you. I'm going to be copying you. I'm going to be comparing myself to you, right? I'm going to view you as my competition or metric of sameness because that also equals safety. Do you guys see where I'm going with this? This is a very, very deep conversation. So if you're feeling me, you're feeling me. If this is going over your head, maybe go back to, I think it's like episode 6, where I really dive deep into the 3 feminine wounds. So the next layer of this is survival. Okay. So, like I said, when the witch hunts happened during the burning times, we associated connection, collaboration, communion, like tribal culture to be associated with danger. It wasn't safe for us to be together and be in connection. And now we all need to start being the same, right? We can't be unique. We can't be different. We can't express our divinity. We can't express and share our gifts. We can't operate in community, because now what's going to happen is if we do those things, then that equals we will not survive. So whenever we get triggered in survival mode, we are literally putting our body into like almost a state of hypervigilance. And what we have access to, what we can tap into, what we can download, receive, create is all limited. It's all limited because it's coming from this element of survival and scarcity, right? It's coming from an underlying frequency of need, right? Where you're operating at the bare minimum. You're at the floor. You're just taking what you need. You're not capable or available for more. When you're operating in safety, sameness, survival, you are disconnected from your sovereignty. You are disconnected from your power. You are disconnected from your essence. And that was the whole idea, right? They knew, and I'm saying they like as like when the rise of the patriarchy happened, they knew that women were extremely powerful. So they begin to demonize and take away all the things that seeded our power, all the things that sourced our power. And as a feminine essence being, different aspects of yourself, different gifts, right? Your soul calling gets activated through your communion with other powerful women. And it's not from being the same, right? It's not from playing in this realm of survival. It's when each of us are so deeply rooted in the embodiment of our essence, in our authenticity, sharing our unique gifts. That's when we're really coming from this paradigm of synergy, right? Of synarchy, where we all have a seat at the table, where we're all bringing in equal power, different fire. That is the truth of the feminine, that we are stronger together and that we get to call our sisters up. How different would your relationships be, especially with different women in your specific industry, if you looked at her as a blessing? That woman, that connection, that relationship was sent into your life to literally call you up and elevate you, sis. How would you walk into the room if you felt that, if you believed that? It would be different. And right now, that's really not the paradigm that most women are operating from. And I'm not going to say all, because I am a strong advocate of women containers and safe spaces for women, and why I truly only coach women, because I see the power when other incredible, powerful women can get together in safe spaces and safe containers and allow each other to be fully seen, to receive support, to create connections. Honestly, like something absolutely extraordinary and magical happens. And we realize that when I am 100% rooted in the embodiment of my essence, in my otherness, in my gifts, and I am sharing those with the world, with my fellow sisters, then the potential that I have to tap into is absolutely limitless. That the sky isn't even the limit there, because it's coming from this energy of connection and service and love and desire, versus this lens of need, attachment, want, lack, scarcity. Can you just feel those different frequencies in your body? So, as women right now, especially if you are a feminine essence leader, we are being called up. I am going to call you up. Now is the time for you to rise in your sacred feminine expression, to rise in your feminine leadership, and to really be rooted in this. You are going to be the type of women who are calling your sisters up, who are bringing other women to the top with you, who are building a bigger table. And you'll realize that when you start playing and operating in this field, in this paradigm, that the abundance, the resources, the opportunities, the downloads, the creativity, like everything starts flowing to you effortlessly. And you realize that when we come together in union, that we can do more. That this isn't about a you versus me or trying to be better than or trying to get ahead of, that we are all literally here to walk each other home, that each of us is a mirror, each of us is an activator, each of us is a way shower for one another. And when we can stop being pegged against each other or stop trying to be the same or stop this just nasty paradigm and this absolutely toxic way that women feel about each other, that we treat each other, how we approach each other, literally, we could change the world. And I know that sounds so, like, silly as I'm saying it, but I really believe it. The feminine have this innate power to birth and to create. And what would we truly be able to birth and create if instead of fighting against each other, we truly came together in service, in love, in connection, in support? And if you are one of the fortunate women who have women like this in your life, you honestly don't know how blessed you are, because almost every single woman that comes into my world that I work with is struggling from this wound so deeply that they don't even want to be part of a group program. And that's why there's such healing done in spaces where women really get to come together, where we get to support each other, where we get to see each other, where we get to fully call each other up. So right now, more than ever, I am really feeling and leaning into the call of the rise of the feminine, the call in feminine leadership, and how absolutely important and necessary it is that we really go within, right? True transformation starts within. We have to go within. We have to start looking at where we are going against our fellow sisters, where we are putting down our fellow sisters, where we can begin to call our sisters up, to love our sisters, to see our sisters, knowing that when we are truly connected to this, we are connected to our sovereignty. We are connected to God. We are connected to our abundance. And here we are in the most potent frequency to birth and to create new worlds. So that is my transmission about the sister wound and the rise of feminine leadership. Let me know how this landed for you. And babe, if you're still listening to this, then this episode is for you. And it's time to go within. It's time to start with you. And it's time to heal the sister wound. Thank you guys so much for joining me for another episode today and just for being here this last year with me as I start this journey of podcasting with you all. It has been so much fun. And if you're curious about entering into my world, I will be opening a few select one on one private mentorship spaces, as well as reopening the doors to my group mastermind Emergence. So, for more information, click the show notes. And I currently am offering a free feminine power channel activation. You can also get the link to that below. And for those of you who really feel called to the priestess path, if you give my podcast a beautiful review, I would love that. I will send you a free transmission on really embodying the path of a priestess. So find me on Instagram. You know where to find me, guys. Have an absolutely magical week. Talk soon.